Look at this. One Nation announcing Cory Bernardi, as they've described it, spearheading the surge for One Nation in South Australia. Let's have a quick listen in.
Lack of services that is happening in the state, the high debt that you have, there's no hope for the people, the cost of living, the lack of housing, mass migration, all these things have accumulated and has had an impact and still will continue to have an impact unless we put out decent, common sense policies to turn it around. I'm warning Labor now. You're on notice. We are coming for your seats and we are actually going to represent the people of this state to give them hope and the future generations hope that they can own a house, hope that they can hold on to a job, hope that they can get that hospital bed when they need it. Nursing homes, it just goes on and on and on. And my main thing is equality for all Australians. And especially with mass migration. If you come to this country, assimilate, become Australian, and join us and be proud of what we are as a nation, not divided. So at this point, I'm going to hand across to my colleague and very warmly welcome Cory Bernardi.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today, and may I pay a particular thank you to Senator Pauline Hanson, the founder and leader of One Nation. Pauline has been perhaps, if not one of the most resilient and prescient political figures of our time. For 3 decades she has been advocating the same course, the right course for Australia. She's saying there is something wrong with the legacy political system where the two-party duopoly effectively is working against the people and just for themselves. And the real measure of that is when you examine the problems that people are facing today, particularly here in South Australia. Crime, housing affordability, the lack of industrial progress, opportunity for families, opportunity for our farmers and our fishers. These are the sorts of things by which we measure the success of a state. And yet all the problems we face are a result of the decades of the two-party duopoly, which have been more entrenched about looking after their own survival than the betterment of the voters who put them there. I'm here to tell you today that that's going to change. Our commitment is to common sense policies that give a voice back to every South Australian. Pauline made a comment that there has been no opposition in this state. It's as if the only competition we have between the two major parties is who's going to manage the social, economic and cultural decline slightly less badly than the alternative. We can't accept that anymore. We need common sense policies. We need a commitment to speak up for the things that matter to every South Australians, not to the party insiders or not the machine men. It's all about the people. And that's what I'm absolutely committed to do. I'm delighted to be...
That is Cory Bernardi. He's a significant figure there in South Australia and he's making his political comeback with One Nation. Andrew Clennell. Look, Cory Bernardi's been very critical of the Liberals for quite some time. He's made this argument. Now he'll be making it in the lead up to the state election there where Labor is, completely dominant and there isn't much of an opposition. Look at the last Sky News poll. I think they were at 12 points and they were polling minus 16 and One Nation was significantly up. So there might be onto something there in South Australia. Of course, there's a lot of other things going on. The Nationals don't really have a presence there. So One Nation could get a foothold. Who knows? But that is completely at odds what we saw Cory Bernardi talk about there, about where centre-right politics is. And I'm not saying he's the centre anymore, but he used to be a party that was the centre. And what Paul Kelly was saying yesterday about how you win elections in this country from the centre. Do you think that is being considered, talked about among the Liberals at the moment?
Well, I think it's an argument why many would say they need a right-wing leader and why Andrew Hastie could have been pretty effective as a sort of a new generational leader, but they'll probably go for Angus Taylor eventually, you'd suspect. But I've seen this I've seen this show before, but I've never seen it with One Nation having such a big vote. But what typically happens, and I've seen it on 2 occasions, I covered the John Howard Tampa election here, is One Nation rises and the Conservative Party, both of these times were in government, moves to the right, adopts some of their policies and stances and takes their vote back. And so I don't think there's much of a choice for the coalition but to go anti-immigration.
But why would
and
people
do something
vote
about the balance of immigration
for the Liberals if they're worried about that issue? You know, why wouldn't they just vote for One Nation? Why wouldn't they eventually vote for the real deal?
If you take that policy, which is the main driver of the vote for One Nation, and particularly probably concern about Islamic immigration, let's be frank, after Bondi, fairly or not fairly, if you take that on as a serious party of government,
sure,
and you mix it with other policy, you take their space. Right now, there's very interesting transformation we've seen here with Pauline Hanson, because I covered her in some of her first years in the Parliament. She was always getting up saying we're going to be swamped by Asians. Now she's probably going to say we're going to be swamped by Muslims. You know, it's the same sort of play, but she's moved on.
Yeah.
And you know, Australians are responding to the immigration thing, but the wicked thing about that is we've got low unemployment. That's fueling inflation. Any business will tell you we need immigrants because of the ageing population. So if you cut back immigration too drastically, you raise inflation, and because wages have to go up because of the supply and demand around workers, and therefore you end up with rate hikes. So it's a vicious political circle that we're in at the moment. I
just want to remind our viewers as well, Andrew, the reason we have these coalitions split was over hate speech laws. I think it's right to again point out what Paul Kelly said to me yesterday. For the Nationals in particular, how many farmers are concerned about their free speech? Is that really the number one order issue? Or are they worried about cost of living? Are they worried about excessive taxes? Are they worried about making ends meet?
Well, Susan Lee folded on net zero to keep the Nationals in the tent, and then they left anyway. I mean, it's quite ironic, isn't it? Because that was an issue that does resonate a lot more in the bush. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's about the farmers. I think it's about they're freaked about One Nation. People are saying that around here, and I think they're absolutely right. Because if you look at who they're most likely to take seats off, One Nation, it's the Nationals. She says we're coming after Labor. Yeah, you might get a seat like Hunter if you're very lucky, but you're more likely to take Nat's seats. And if One Nation want to become a serious political movement, well, they need people other than Cory Bernardi. They need reps, and that's why they're going for. Will Barnaby run in the lower house? I would argue he should if they're serious. Lou O'Brien is another target of theirs, as is Colin Boyce. It would be helpful to them if they could get some people in the lower house to show that they can represent Australia in the lower house, because in the preferential system, it's not that easy.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Just a reminder, we do have a preferential system. It is very different. So that is something that these parties absolutely have to consider. Andrew, got to leave it there. Well over time. We'll see you soon.